I declare the session of Parliament formally open.
South Africa and the relationship of the public with Parliament is a very interesting one. South Africa has had this very bumpy ride. So let's all agree in general we were very positive and we had a very good first Parliament. Even the second and the third were good in terms of economic development, policy development in South Africa. And I want to say overall general stability and hopefulness for where South Africa was going post-1994. And Parliament, especially the first one, had to set up many new sets of legislation and a constitution to give guidance as to what South Africa must look like. And this then set the tone for us going forward. We start then looking at a very concerning period, and this they specifically term the 8 lost years of South Africa. These occur within the 4th and the 5th Parliament. So in the mid between, let's say roughly from it was about 2012-ish until end of 2018. And those were the years that Jacob Zuma was the president. And they are also the ones that we generally refer to as the state capture years. What happened was not only just the systematic erosion of state-owned entities and government departments in terms of corruption, the Gupta's interference, putting people in key positions of power to contribute to this corruption and to strengthen this illegal system. But we also see the systematic erosion and disarmament of Parliament that ought to hold the executive to account. This then also means, because of the African National Congress, the ANC, being a full-out majority party, they towing the line. Once again, in Parliament, you need to serve the public, not your party. But many of them towed party line. They were also put into positions of power. Once again, we've got closed party lists. We have no say and control of who are those MPs on the party lists. They could have insisted on proper accountability and oversight and then follow the mechanisms to address this. But they did not. Based on our research, we felt that they ignored these warning signs and allowed state capture to happen, despite very clear red flags. It was only really after Jacob Zuma was expelled or kicked out being president, and President Ramaphosa came in, and then systematically within the 6th administration, together with the State Capture Commission, or commonly known as the Zondo Commission, that the evidence, the issues came to light, and then seeing the disregard, really, of Parliament. There was no longer that separation of powers that is so crucial. And even the Zondo Commission had findings against Parliament, saying if they had acted sooner, if they had done their job, many of this could have been avoided. Then bearing in mind, we've got the 6th administration that came to an end last year, so it ran from 2019 to 2024. They dealt with the fallout of state capture. So you're dealing with 3 administrations where it came to the rise, functioned in full, and then we have the fallout. 3 very clear stages. Now we're sitting with the 7th, this hopefulness. We no longer have a massive majority of a political party. There are other represented political parties, and we can see a difference where chairpersons and members of parliament are actually stepping up, asking very difficult questions, insisting on feedback, taking account. And yes, they can do the job better, but at least it's not playing a party or contributing to what has occurred before. It's resetting the tone. So for Parlimeter, as this dashboard, we go according to this tagline, which is access, accountability, and action. Go to the difference between access and inaccessibility, or access and accessibility. Just because you have access to something, it doesn't mean it is accessible. We are highly dependent on the work of PMG, Parliamentary Monitoring Group, and their website. Essentially because Parliament takes long to update their own website, and they do not really contain user-friendly information.
PMG's role is then to provide the data for the dashboard. So we are the ones that are in Parliament, monitoring every committee meeting, monitoring attendance, producing audios and transcripts, and then monitoring the daily work of Parliament to update bills, questions to MPs, to ministers, for example.
You can have a website with all this information available, but if it's not organized, if it's not updated, if it's old, then it becomes inaccessible. So that's why we're highly dependent on PMG. Even Parliament is dependent on PMG, quite interestingly. And then we also have OpenUp that already works with PMG in dashboard development and back-end development together with other civil societies.
So OpenUp's role is to visualize the dashboard, bring the dashboard to life, to understand the work that goes into developing the dashboard.
We had to be very cognizant of the fact that we had to draw a fine line between presenting data as a spreadsheet and presenting data in a way that answered questions for people. On the overview dashboard, which is what we're referring to, you get answers to questions like, which member attended the most meetings, how many meetings were there, what was the length of the meetings, and the data that we have taken to try and answer questions that we feel are important to monitoring Parliament and to monitoring parties and parliamentarians. So at the top, we've got things around scheduling. So how many meetings were scheduled? Did the meetings run long? What were the length of the meetings? All things that if an MP tells you that they were very busy and I couldn't do X, Y, and Z because I was very busy, and I actually, I couldn't get to that meeting because I was busy, you can go and double check. You can verify. You can say, actually, I looked at you on Parlimeter, and I see that actually you were below average for the number of meetings attended compared to the rest of them. So the overview dashboard is designed, it breaks the data down into categories: scheduling, attendance, and we call it activities. Activities are things like answering and asking of questions to ministers by MPs, which we feel is an important part of parliamentary duties and is a good sign of a parliamentarian taking action and being vocal and not just being someone who sort of sits in the background and doesn't take it upon themselves to ask questions or get engaged. Then we have the attendance dashboard, and this gets more into sort of the data side of things. This is more of sort of a spreadsheet view. This is a place where you can go and look up a member or a committee or a party and see their attendance register. So for a specific period, you can see how many meetings have they attended, how many meetings did they excuse themselves from. And then we have the bill tracker, which is a dashboard that puts all the members, all the bills that are currently before Parliament and ones that have sort of been in Parliament previously but have been dismissed or have been passed or rejected for whatever reason. You can toggle on a bunch of filters and see and find the bills that you care about and see how long have they been in Parliament, when was the last meeting on this bill, how active has this bill been? Are people talking about it a lot, or has it kind of gone quiet? You can click on any of the bills and you can see a complete record of all the meetings that have taken place on that bill. And I think just representing that information visually to see, wow, look at this bill over here, it's been in Parliament for 5,000 days. Just seeing it makes you think, why? Makes you ask questions.
But equally for us, in terms of Parliameter's development and the function that it is essentially as an instrument, is to have the curated data as neutral as possible, allowing researchers, media, and others to make their own deductions and inferences. Now we take our own insights, compile our own shorter reports, our blog pieces, and saying, okay, this is what we see from the data. This is how you can potentially use it.
So we are addressing all stages. We're addressing someone who wants the data. We're addressing someone who wants to understand Parliament and is sort of not really that data savvy. And we're also addressing someone who wants to get a little bit into the data and wants sort of a dashboard or an overview that gives them some tidbits to link onto and get some information.
We know Parliament is busy. It's not like they are not doing anything and just sitting around and twiddling for thumbs. And we also acknowledge that just counting meetings, meeting attendance, doesn't mean they are meaningfully busy or meaningfully productive, but it does give a measure of insight as to what they are doing. Similarly And then we also go and take it to the public, which is why we also in this project have public engagement workshops where we have gone to universities to deal with the youth. We have gone to communities. We have dealt with people that aren't experts in the political sphere, that aren't experts in political science, but these are concerned citizens that know that their infrastructure is not being dealt with. They are not getting the service that they deserve and that they are entitled to. So we decided to create almost this ecosystem where we have different approaches to achieve the same goal, which is enhancing accountability and transparency to ensure that we don't have state capture occur again.
We've been able to reach out to diverse, groups of organizations. We even had small business, which is not, it's not often, especially with civil society, because we're always on our own. But we had a fair, sizable number of young, small business women. And for us, and we believe that also, there are issues. If you look at today, there's an issue around spaza shops and the food poisoning and, all those kind of issues, which I think they've impacted also negatively on the small business, because then they had to go and re-register. And yesterday we heard about, the challenges that are facing in terms of trying to, register, their businesses. So with them as well, I think now they went back at least with a hope, because now they've learned that they can actually track where the processes are. They can be able to track what is a small business, the minister responsible for small business, in terms of new programs or bills rather, and policies that she's putting forward in Parliament. And also there are issues they can be able to make a follow-up by, using the dashboard, So it has been very, educative and fruitful. And I think participants are quite excited, because then they feel that they're empowered and they can go back to their communities as well and share the information so that others who are not here can be able to also access the, the tool
I feel like a lot of people aren't aware enough of the work of PMG already, right? PMG is 20 years old. They've already done so much work that sometimes you show someone PMG and they think, wow, this is an amazing new tool, but PMG's been here for 20 years and people haven't used it or known that it was there to be used. Or maybe it just wasn't reaching them because it seems directed at parliamentarians or like an official tool. Maybe the vibe of it is that it's very it's designed in such a way that it doesn't feel like something for citizens. It feels like a business tool or something like that, right? And if you just actually show people PMG and PA and People's Assembly and you show them what's already available, they're like, wow, this is amazing. And it opens their eyes to it.
We are so excited about Parliamentary. We've been trying to get our voices heard. We've been trying to get enough data about what's happening in Parliament, because sometimes when we're talking, it's like we're coming with assumptions. But then Parliamentary gives us, the right data, the right information for us to challenge based on facts, not only on hearsay. So yes, Parliamentary is a tool that we think it's giving our communities access to be able to get that access and to also hold the parliamentarians, especially our government officials, accountable. We are able to gather the data that we were otherwise not going to be able to access.
So a lot of people were not aware of the tool, which is Parliameter. They were not aware of things which are happening around in terms of Parliament, how it works. So I think a lot of my key takeaways when they were asking questions which were vital, though some of them are service delivery, then we tried to explain that we're not government. But I took away that the people now have information, they know what to do, they know how to complain, they know where to send their issues to. If you are complaining about this issue, this is how we can go about it. And let's check how these people who voted in they are performing. It's like a student, because if you send a student to school, you need to know the results. Now you have something which will help you to know if that student is doing what he's supposed to be doing.
People are interested, they're engaging, and they're asking to be part of this.
I think a beautiful app, a beautiful tool that can actually help South Africans to demand, accountability and access to leadership or power that be, and in this instance, is Parliament. But it would actually also be very nice if it was to go down to, your provincial legislatures, so that people can also engage with the provincial legislatures. As down as your local municipality.
This is a tool that is going to save generations, because for us to get people to be active is for such a tool as the Parliamentary dashboard.
The general work, or the work and the activity of the parliamentarian, it gives us the information in particular their duties, where are they responsible or their responsibilities. In general,
so every citizen should know their country. They should know their rights to democracy, constitution. But our people know nothing about that, because people just know that they have to vote. When time for voting, everyone is visible on the street. But after voting, people are not even given direction on to who to ask after that, who needs to account. People are just left there to figure things for themselves.
Parliament is something that you see on TV, when there's like a national assembly and you're watching these different political parties. But having access to it, absolutely not. I am very sure that there are probably some South Africans who probably don't even know where Parliament is.
Where Parliament is situated is a disadvantage to the majority of South Africans. That is number one. Number two, access to Parliament is limited because of the bureaucratic tapes, or the red tapes, if you may say so, that are imposed.
There isn't much education that is given to the citizen so that they can know their roles, their rights, and even access to this institution.
It just starts and ends in Parliament, and decisions are made on behalf of the majority of the people who don't even contribute to influence the decisions that are made by MPs in Parliament.
Since after COVID, I've seen more things publicized on TV and social media about what's going on in Johannesburg between people seeking and the food is moving now. Because people now use that.
Parliamentary will play a very important role because it will be a middleman, so to say, between Parliament and the citizens. We saw what is happening. It's like we saw the Parliament outside of Parliament. They gave us what is inside the Parliament.
I think if you polled the first 20 people you found on the streets of the Western Cape to ask them how easily accessible Parliament is, they tell you, how scary it is to access the buildings, what kind of details, you have to have your ID on you, you need to have an invitation from somebody to be able to enter the building. And this is prior to the building burning. I think now that it's been relocated to a tent, it's probably even more cumbersome to access.
I would say, for my opinion, South Africa is decaying.
There's all these routes that the public needs to follow to get into Parliament, or to get to a certain place in Parliament, or to a certain person in Parliament. The public that votes them in place gets to be sent around after they are in that place. And then they don't want to see the public anymore. The people need to follow routes, regulations, and all these stuff to get to them at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, when they do get somewhere, it's not the person the public want to see.
We've got the youth that's coming up. It's gonna be a dying country, which is only few youth that I see that it's involved in the activities of the country, and also even locally.
Or the biggest challenge that we have now is that a disease is set in, and it's called apathy. And I think that goes right through society, from the top to the bottom. And this is why there's a problem that everybody's getting away scot-free with what they do, because you can bamboozle anybody with a whole lot of explanations, and it's accepted as such.
Have they spoken? Are they quiet? Because if an MP is quiet for a whole year, then what are you doing there? You're of no service to the people.
Currently, South Africa is in a state of emergency. There's an outcry. It's a SOS. Save our souls. People are crying out daily. The stats on murder rates and gangsterism has taken over. Our country is under siege.
Because our country at this very moment, for the person outside of our country, it smells nice, it speaks nice, but for us in our country, we don't feel like this country belongs to us. It feels as if someone is owning our own country.
The next response is the outcry that you're seeing, people taking the law into their own hands, because it looks like we're in a de facto state, that there is not enough protection. The law enforcement agencies and the resources that's been made available, it's not working, it's failing.
I would prefer to see a constituency operation whereby people have more direct access.
As I asked the questions about the protection of the whistleblowers, because we have a lot of whistleblowers, we've seen how the whistleblowers are not protected or how they even are executed. And what is the response, not just from civil society but from government in terms of the protection? So coming then back to the parliamentarians, using the information on the dashboard gives us factual information that we can now respond to and use to keep them accountable.
It's an airy manner, you see, for them to get us know what's happening in there, and then knowing what's happening in there, so that we together could have the light or insight, of the future of our country.
How well or how often do citizens engage with Parliament? Or do they even understand what Parliament's function is?
The workshops have shown that there's really a gap in education and in understanding what our MPs do, what their roles are, and how Parliament is different to government. And the workshop also really showed to me that there is interest in people understanding what happens in Parliament, and that Parliament is not some ivory tower that's irrelevant to your everyday experience.
We need to remember that we have this thing called the balance of powers, the separation of powers, which then means we have these three spheres of state. It's the executive, or commonly the government departments. They are the ones that execute the work that needs to be done on the ground. Then you have the legislature, which is Parliament, consisting of National Assembly, National Council of Provinces, as well as the 9 provincial legislatures. And then the third arm is the judiciary. These are the courts. Now, these three must be balanced, and to make sure that the two of them don't usurp each other, manipulate, or control each other. And it must be free of interference, essentially.
But we've tried as much as possible to remain neutral and hope that the people coming to the platform know the right questions to ask in order to be able to infer. And that's also the role of journalists, right? Because journalists are those people who have the questions, can use our data to come up with the answers, and then package that in a way that takes that story to the people in a way that is digestible and relevant to their local situation.
Now, what we have found in our research even is that South Africans are generally not aware of this balance and separation of powers. From what I recall, this was not taught to us within life orientation in school. This was something I only stumbled upon when really starting to do this work. I feel this is not a general education or an awareness that we have.
And so people often say that there's a huge gap between Parliament and what happens on the ground. But if you dig deeper, there are ways that we can bridge that gap and to bring Parliament and make it more relevant to your daily experience.
The one that is the most critical, I feel, is the constituency information. We have PMG is in direct chats, and OUTA in direct conversation with Secretary of Parliament as well as whips, party whips, to put together constituency maps or lists of constituencies and who, which MPs are responsible for those constituencies. The reality is that a lot of the information they've been giving for a long time, and it'll be to a constituency office, not to an MP. And the amount of work involved to manually go and chat to parliamentarians and, to get that information correct is massive.
So what we would like actually to lobby is the wrong word, but to get Parliament to consider having a separate annual report on constituency leave. So what did they do? What are the highlights? What were the core challenges raised? What were the insights? And crucially, especially for our work, the funds spent. What is the overall budget? What is it allocated to? Is it transport? Is it accommodation? Is it the printing of materials? Is it the mobilization of citizen engagement and education? And just give that snapshot.
And my biggest question is does Parliament not care about that? So I could go into a whole thing about sort of the improvements to procedures, but also just the question of how are you actually being effective without these procedures in place? There's no if Parliament was a business, I would look at it and say, how are we measuring ourselves? How are we comparing ourselves year to year? What are the metrics that we use? What are the data and I would say that they were failing terribly if we were to look at it as a business. So constituency is something we are working on, and we would love for Parliament to come to the table and say, actually, we'll just mandate that constituency classifications need to be given in 2026, and that's going to be a thing, and we'll be able to provide you that data. But the chances of that happening are very slim. So we are manually doing it, and we will try and make that data available because that is the connection between local issues and MPs, and to keep tabs on MPs and when they are on their constituency breaks, are they actually in their constituencies? The step one is knowing who your MP is and what their constituency is.
So now we've got constituency leave, time being spent, money being spent. it's not part of our official electoral system, we don't get that representation, which is so important then again for Parliameter to raise awareness for citizens and researchers as to who are your members of Parliament, because we don't know. And frankly, in most cases, maybe we don't even care.